They say cocoa is Ghana, Ghana is cocoa. And if you look at our history, you will realize that cocoa goes way back, all the way from the 1870s. And the story of cocoa actually, to me, it demonstrates the industry, the ingenuity, the enterprise, the hard work of the Ghanaian. Because of all the crops in this country that is important, cocoa story is that it's not indigenous to us. We didn't find cocoa here. It was a Ghanaian who traveled and came back with a seed, and that seed took hold. And when that seed took hold, Ghanaians embraced it. And in the matter of less than 40 years, between the 1870s and 1930s, Ghana had become the biggest exporter and producer of cocoa. This is remarkable. If you look at any crop in the history of this world, it's not common to find such growth in a short time. So it shows you that Ghanaians are enterprising, they are industrious. And not only did we become just the highest producer and exporter, Ghana's cocoa became premium cocoa. Our cocoa became the gold standard. So even up till today, we command a premium price for our cocoa beans because of the industriousness of our people in how they cultivate, in how they ferment and dry. These are things that shows that the Ghanaian can really achieve something world class if we put our head to it. So the conversation about cocoa is not just about one crop, but basically it's about a way of life, culture of excellence and achievement that we should celebrate as Ghanaians. I will try to take the issue from three angles, and the first one will be the agronomic aspect of cocoa. Why we are where we are, looking at the agronomic aspects, the planting, the cultivation, and the investments, all the things that deals with it, that makes the cocoa crop grow and the people cultivate. And then I'll also talk about the economic justice and sustainability angle of this discussion. And then I'll also talk about the political economy. That's where I'll end. So starting with the agronomic, as we speak today, I remember I mentioned that Ghana used to be the largest producer of cocoa. As we speak today, Ghana is the third largest producer of cocoa, even though it is the second largest exporter. The difference between the highest producer of cocoa, which is Côte d'Ivoire, and Ghana is so wide. This year we are hoping to do just above 600,000 metric tons. Côte d'Ivoire is pushing to 2.4 million just this year alone. And this is coming from a time where we used to supply over 40% of the global crop. So as of now, we are supplying less than 20% of the global crop from 40%. This is the predicament that we have found ourselves in. What happened? So if you look at the charts of cocoa production in Ghana, you realize that all the way from the 1930s until independence, it peaked in 1954-55. And since then, after Nkrumah's overthrow, we went down south. In fact, by 1977, Ghana has lost its position as the largest producer and exporter of cocoa to Côte d'Ivoire. So from Nkrumah's overthrow time all the way up till 1977, there had been a precipitous decline in the production of cocoa. And there are reasons why. The reasons are that, number one, the attention that should have been paid to cocoa production was not. In fact, our national decline, I mean, it mimics our national decline, how we don't take things seriously that are supposed to be taken serious. And also the investment and the policy environment that will make the cocoa production grow didn't pay attention to it. And also, when you come to other issues, the recent issues about mining, whenever I come here to talk about mining, I'm very careful not to talk about, to single out what they call galamsey, because we have sustainable and unsustainable mining. I volunteered with Wakam some time back, and I remember in 2006, 2004, 2006, Ghana was allowing mining companies, big mining companies, to cut down cocoa trees at 13 cedi a tree to mine. After we liberalized our mining, and then we are now mining open cast, we cut down cocoa trees to mine. But that is not the only issue. So galamsey is not the only reason why we used to cut down cocoa tree for mining. It's been part of our mining sector, even with the big mines. But if we look at the current situation, what is the nature of cocoa production now? The farmer population of cocoa in Ghana, when I read the literature, was around 58 years. So the average cocoa farmer is 58 years. You and I know that for at 58 years, we are getting ready to retire. But these are the people tending to the cocoa farms to produce the cocoa. Secondly, the farms themselves have aged. And we were told that we had gone for a $200 million loan to rehabilitate cocoa farms. The last time I listened to the current chief executive of the cocoa board, I learned that we hadn't done even more than 40% of the hectares of cocoa farms that we had to rehabilitate to ensure that we have a future in the cocoa industry. Then we also have land availability, land tenure. In fact, something that we have postponed for a long time, that is difficult to get land to do cultivation in Ghana. I mean, if you want to do large scale cocoa cultivation, you can get a small land, or somebody selling their already old cocoa farm, but to get a big land, it's an issue because of the land tenure issues that we have. Then we also have, in the production aspect, new agronomic practices which have not seeped down as it should. The fertilization, the pruning, the care, all these things, we are falling behind Cote d'Ivoire and Indonesia, who we were producing more than. Even in some countries, they are irrigating cocoa farms to improve yield. As of now, we don't have. And there's one advantage that Ghana had in terms of our industry. It was smallholder individual farms that was producing cocoa. In other countries where they had a plantation system, which I don't prescribe to, they were able to maximize the labor productivity and all those things. But where they didn't have those ones, what they did was to have cooperatives, so that they can pool their resources, they can pool their strength to increase the productivity of cocoa in but Ghana has fallen behind in all these reforms. Of course, we can talk about the diseases and other such issues. Then what about the infrastructure and the economic revitalization of the rural areas where cocoa and other farming activities are done, so that you can keep the labor there, you can have young people staying there, water, electricity, good roads. So in the name of increasing good roads in cocoa growing area, we came out with the cocoa roads, and we found ourselves building cocoa roads in cities and towns, whereas the market access to cocoa farms were the roads there were not good enough. So the lack of purposive investment in the rural economy in terms of infrastructure has also affected cocoa. So many people who should have been in the cocoa sector are no longer in the cocoa. And people will say we are in the 21st century, so we should adopt 21st century practices. How well are we endorsing using the 21st century agronomic practices like the equipment, drones, and all those things to be able to produce cocoa on a large scale or to be more intensive and efficient? So these are some of the issues that affect the crop itself. Then we want to talk about the value chain. Before I got here, I did a research on the total value chain of the cocoa, the chocolate sector. The whole value chain is worth almost $130 billion as at 2024. $130 billion. The part that comes to the people who produce the raw beans worldwide is only $16 billion. 16 billion. So you can clearly see that those who work hard to generate the beans have only 14% of the total value of the industry. And this is the crux, one of the crux of the issue why we are where we are today. That the government has announced a decrease in the farm gate price or the producer price of cocoa, because the international market, which we have very little control over, has collapsed or has reduced, and we are in trouble. But when we say the total value chain of the cocoa crop is 120 billion, what it means is that the things that they use cocoa to produce generate over 5 times more than those who plant and export the cocoa. And this is an example that we should have learned from Kwame Nkrumah's time, because between 1958 and 1964 the price of cocoa fell by almost 80% on the international markets. So what did Kwame Nkrumah do? He set up the cocoa processing factory even back then, so that we can now process our cocoa into the paste, the powder, and then go on to do the chocolate that today is Valentine's Day. The amount of chocolate that will be consumed worldwide, those of us who produce the cocoa, how much of that value is coming to us? Just 14%. So this is the lesson that Kwame Nkrumah learned for us, and he invested in the CPC for us to create a value chain. But we have left that behind, and that is when I was talking about the decline from 1965 coming downwards. We realized that because of the low investment and the total mismanagement, we have come to where we are. So the whole value chain and the production, you can see that there are problems at every stage. So when we were discussing when the president was discussing, the government was discussing the solutions, they are now proposing that 50% of the cocoa beans must be processed. And I'm very happy that we have come back to this, because this is the direction that we have to go. If we want to improve the cocoa production and the value and increase employment, we need to be able to have the cocoa beans processed here, not just semi-processed, also turn into the final products. And when we talk about the cocoa industry, when you take the 14% value of the beans that the producers are getting, the rest of the value is going to those who manufacture the chocolate, the drinks, and everything. Big companies like Barry Caliber, they are in Ghana here, Olam, and let's not forget, Olam is from Singapore, and Olam is part of Temasek, which is a state-owned conglomerate. Don't let anybody lie to you that state-owned companies cannot work. That is how come we have suppressed CPC from achieving its objective of processing and manufacturing confectionaries out of cocoa. And even countries like Malaysia, China, they are all having big multinationals involved in cocoa production and getting the value. So what stops us from going along the value chain after production to be able to get the value? I'm sure if this was the case, we would have handled the crisis better. We could have been able to say that, well, we are going to create 80% more value than what we are going to get, so we can afford to pay the farmers the prices that they deserve, which to me they deserve anyway. So I want to come back to the economics and then economic justice of this whole cocoa sector. So we are told that the cocoa board is in trouble, and we all knew that. Anybody who took any interest in the cocoa affairs of this country over the past 10 years, especially within the last 8 years coming, you would have realized that we had been mismanaging the cocoa board. We managed the cocoa board to the point that there was a time that we couldn't even understand whether cocoa board was an investment, an infrastructure investment arm of the government, or it was just a cocoa buying company. We didn't know, because cocoa board was giving contract for the construction of roads all over. In fact, in some years they gave the value of cocoa board road construction contracts were about 30% of the national budget for road construction. Meanwhile, according to the PNDC law 81 of 1984, which established the cocoa board, its roles and responsibilities and functions and objectives are clearly defined. Now there is a creep of function that their tentacles are everywhere, and they are spending money like there was no tomorrow. So we are told that as at 2024, the cocoa board had $4 billion cedis worth of certificates that had been certified for payment for road construction and other infrastructure jobs. Meanwhile, the total value of the cocoa produce in 2024, the export earning, was less than $2 billion. So how can you have a situation where the cocoa board is now an infrastructure arm and has taken its eye off the real job of marketing cocoa? Now, back into history, why did we set up cocoa board? Cocoa board was set up just so that we can smoothen the price volatility of cocoa commodities. So there were years that cocoa prices will go up, and there were years that cocoa prices will go down. The farmer will suffer when cocoa prices go down, and because the resilience of farmers after that fall in price is very difficult for them to get back on their feet, the decision was taken that, listen, let's have a marketing board to be able to smoothen the prices. Indeed, in 1947, the idea was not like that. The idea was extraction by the colonial economy. In fact, the cocoa in Ghana propped up Britain at some point. It was our reserves. In fact, at a point, Ghana's reserves from cocoa exports was the second highest in the British colonial empire. That was, and all the money was kept in London to finance their development. So they had the idea of setting up cocoa to exploit us. But when Nkrumah came in 1951, what he did was to use the cocoa to benefit the country. So if you take the cocoa board at that time, Nkrumah also set up the produce buying company, the cocoa marketing company, which now became the marketing and buying arm of the cocoa board. And the idea was that the government will control the value chain, extract the surpluses that will come out of it, and use the surpluses, number one, to smoothen the prices volatility, and number two, to fund development. But it wasn't the other way around, is to use leverage on Cocoa Board's bank sheet statement, bank balance, to finance development that it cannot afford. So we have actually veered away from the objective of the Cocoa Board, and that is how come we have the debt that we have. Then we also have the situation where the Cocoa Board now has become a huge monolith, a bureaucratic monolith, with many people employed there whose services may not be essential to, number one, buying and selling of cocoa and assuring quality of cocoa. That is basically the core of the Cocoa Board. But now they are doing so many things. They've sent their tentacles everywhere, and they've employed many people who may not be essential. We are not saying people should not get jobs. People should definitely get jobs, but the jobs should be in the cocoa manufacturing sector, where we are turning the cocoa into chocolate and condiments, so that confectionery, so that we can get more money. Not for them to line up in the offices and shortchanging the cocoa farmer. So the crisis is self-made, self-inflicted, and I will not try to make it one person did this, that is the race to the bottom kind of discussion, that one person did this, another person did this. I think what we need to do is to move beyond that discussion. We know that the cocoa sector is in crisis. The cocoa sector is in crisis, and what we need to do is to find solutions towards the problems. So in coming back to the solution, Cocoa Board must return to its core mandate. Its core mandate of number one, the first core mandate, is to ensure that when there is price volatility, Cocoa Board must have reserves that is invested from the 30% that we keep from the cocoa farmer, so that we can pay something to top up the income differential. There is something in economics that we were told when we were learning economics. They call something the cobweb effect. It happens in agriculture because agric is a very volatile and fragile economic sector. In the year where you have plenty, you have bumper harvest, prices drop, you even be struggling to find markets. But so in the following year, as a rational farmer, what you would do is that, well, I made a loss because I produced too much, so I'll cut down on the production. So in the next planting season, they will cut back on the production. So there will be a decrease in the productivity, and many individual farmers take that decision. We find out that the price goes up, but when the price goes up in the following year, there's not enough produce for them to take advantage of. So either way, the farmer is losing. And in the cocoa sector, it's even worse because the produce is not sold in Ghana, it's sold on international markets, which the value and the price you and I cannot determine. It's determined exogenously from the economy. So if you have a cocoa board, its role is to build reserves in years where the prices are high, after taking away the 30% from the cocoa farmer, and use that reserve to bridge the gap between the low price the following year or the subsequent years, or a crash in the price in the subsequent year, so that the farmers do not suffer unnecessarily. So this is the actual core mandate, and Cocoa Board must return to that core mandate. In the reforms that is being considered, we understand that the bill is already in Parliament. We hope that that core mandate of Cocoa Board is reaffirmed, so that going forward we will not spend the reserves, which its primary aim is to cushion cocoa farmers against volatility. The second one is for the Cocoa Board to find its feet directly in the production of cocoa, not to own farms, but if you look at the law, they are also supposed to own coffee farms, cocoa farms, and shea butter, shea nut farms. But they may not be able to, because we know the environment that we are in now. I mean, nobody wants the state to do anything. So let's give them the benefit. But the core mandate of number one, ensuring that there's efficiency in the expenditure of using the cocoa proceeds to support the farmer. We are told that as we speak, there are over 40,000 or so many millions of juice sacks which are in the port. Even though what is in the stores can last for like 3, 4, 5 years. But we've already given contract to supply. Of course, the procurement economy that we have, the whole infrastructure that we have built around patronage will not allow. But we need to take the bull by the horn and stop this procurement gigs that depletes the reserves of cocoa board. So we need to come back to that model of cocoa board, ensuring that the farmers get the agrochemicals, the fertilizers, the services that they need on the farm to keep the farms healthy and productive. They also need to invest in cocoa research, so that technology is used to ensure that there's less drudgery, so that the aging farmer can easily be replaced, so that they can go home and rest. Or even if they are farming, they don't have to use high energy and drudgery to plant and harvest their cocoa, which helps the economy. So we need to come back to that. Then we need cocoa board to be reformed, so that all the things that they do which are not essential to its core mandates, they are pruned off. I think that the idea of cocoa road is a good conceptualization, but using the cocoa board to fund cocoa road is a wrong approach. And we hope that this finds expression in the new law, so that we can have a new cocoa board which is focused and financially sound to focus on the cocoa sector. Then I will come back to the political economy.
Please conclude on that one.
Yes, so that one is very important, because if I was in the meeting to advise the president and the ministers, I would have given them a historical perspective of what cocoa means in the political economy of Ghana. The NLM was founded using cocoa as a pretext. And if I was there advising, I would have told the government that please do not reduce the price of cocoa. It has economic justice and a historical political economy aspect to it. The economic justice, I'll start with the economic justice. The economic justice part is this: cocoa farmers have given up 30% of their value, because we have never had a situation cocoa farmers have had more than 70% of the value until today, that the president has announced, that the government has announced that they are giving them 90%. This is the first time. But even the first time we are doing that, we are having a reduction in the producer price midstream. What I would have advised the government is that, listen, do not reduce the pricing, because of the historical perspective that we can put to what the cocoa farmers have done for this country. Cocoa farmers have given up their surpluses for the development of this country. So if the government brings out money from the treasury to make up for that historical sacrifice, we are even being told that what is left to be purchased, about 50,000, even if it's a billion cedis, it would have been a sacrifice worth its time, because cocoa farmers for a long time have sacrificed. So economic justice perspective, they shouldn't have reduced the price. But it's happened. Some of the farmers have understood, they've accepted. And we hope that the farmers will be engaged further, so that they can understand the sacrifice they are making. But even aside from that, I would suggest to the government that those who are being asked to sell at a lower price than the first, on initial market producer price, their details are taken, and in due course, when we are able to build reserves, they are recompensed for the loss in the revenue that they were supposed to. And then I'll just end with the political economy aspect. Just to say that the NLM was formed with a pretext to protect cocoa farmers. In fact, the NLM had a policy proposition that they should collapse cocoa board. Because we all know that it wasn't what it meant. It's the same thing like they were talking about federation. They use all these sentiments as pretext. As a government, you need to have your eye on history and the eye on the pulse of the culture. Cocoa is not just an economic crop that if somebody loses money, cocoa is a whole subculture on its own. In fact, my grandfather was cocoa farmers, and I know what cocoa means to them between October and January the following year. That is when you see people building their houses and doing things and marrying more and all those things. So with an eye on that, I would have preferred that they would have bitten the bullets the hard way and be steadfast to ensure that this doesn't become a political hot potato which is going to drain a lot of political capital and goodwill from the government. But of course, they have already taken a decision. But what they should do is to talk to the cocoa farmers, to talk to Ghanaians, for Ghanaians to appreciate the times that we are in. I will end by saying that cocoa is a demonstration of Ghanaian ingenuity. And cocoa is grown almost everywhere in Ghana. I saw a video of cocoa in northern region and upper west, and it affects a lot of lives. And in terms of its effect on the economy, we say some economic activity are enclave economy, but cocoa is an economy that touches every life. So the government must take this crisis as an opportunity to bring in the reforms so that in 10 years time we will not just be the third producer. We will go back to our former glory when we used to be the highest producer and exporter of cocoa.
Comrade, thank you. Thank you very much. Comrade Kwesi Adakwa is a member of the socialist movement of Ghana. If you just join us, we're discussing the matter of cocoa. And I'm sure you've been following what has been transpiring in terms of the reforms that the government has announced, especially the biggest one that's caught attention has been the reduction in the price that's paid to the farmers. You know.
Sir, good morning.
Once again.
And good morning to our cherished viewers and listeners. Senna, thank you so much, Mr. Adakwa. Nice submission, brilliant submission. I just want to take you from a little bit of the history.
Okay.
Cocoa farming started in Ghana somewhere in this part of West Africa, somewhere in the 1870s. Okay. Just as Mr. Adakwa even alluded to. We are told that Tete Kwashi brought cocoa to Ghana. He brought the seed to Ghana and laid the foundations for this industry. Somewhere in 1937, our cocoa farmers went on a strike. A long strike for about 8 months. And in that strike period, there was a commission set up called the Noel Commission.
Okay.
It was out of the Noel Commission that a marketing board was to be set up. So the first marketing board that was set up was called the West African Produce Control Board.
Okay.
West African Produce Control Board. What was the reason for the strike? The Europeans were not paying the farmers good prices, or the farmers were agitating that they are not getting the best prices from their European buyers. So the Europeans sat down, set up a commission, and created what they call a control board to control the produce that was coming from West Africa, so that the farmer or the West African producer would feel that he has a fair price for his cocoa. That was the beginning of what we call the cocoa board today. It metamorphosized into cocoa marketing board from 47 to about 79, and then from 79 till now, it became what we call the cocoa board today. Cocoa board, in a nutshell, is a perpetuation of the Gettysburg economy. In fact, it's a perpetuation of colonialism. If I dare say, a perpetuation of slavery, because A cocoa farmer today is literally working for an European trader. You can determine the price of cocoa even 2 years before he goes to his farm. The guy that is working in the bush in Asenkrigua, waking up at dawn with his children, going to the farm to farm, dodging snake bites, insect bites and all that, is working for an European family or farmer or a European trader who maybe today is a shareholder. An European family who today may be a shareholder of a big European trading house. That is all we are doing. That is all we are doing. Cheap labor. Sometimes even child labor. My brother was talking about cocoa justice. I thought he was going to add that to it. Child labor in that industry is a big problem. Cocoa is a confectionery. You only use cocoa when let me give you an example. Put a bowl of rice here and put a pack of chocolate here. And that's all that you have to eat. Which one will you choose first? Rice. Obviously the rice. It's after you have eaten the rice and you are full and you have extra income. That is when you buy chocolate. That is when you buy chocolate. So when I say that cocoa is a perpetuation of slavery, it's just like plantation slavery. This time we are not carrying the people there. The people are on their own land and are farming as slaves for others. When you look at the value chain of cocoa, the farmer gets 14 billion, if I'm using his numbers. The big chunk of the value is not owned by us. That farmer there will not benefit from that value. You know why? Because when you go on the bus in London and you see, or the tube station, and you see a child with running noses picture on the wall, with an African child, there's always an African child with running nose, with his picture on the wall, it is telling that European child that these people, no, you can't even eat their food. So you make all the chocolate in Ghana, and those kids will never buy. They will eat Cadbury. So that value chain that is why for a long time, when Kufuor was forcing Barry Callebaut and Co to set up here, people didn't understand. They said, we can develop our local industry to a certain level. But I'm telling you, when it comes to things like confectionery, Switzerland doesn't produce chocolate, but everybody buys Swiss chocolate. They don't produce cocoa. Everybody buys Swiss chocolates because they believe that, the Swiss are clean. They are going to eat good food. No European kid is going to eat a Ghanaian chocolate. We export some, but we struggle to export. It's people who understand the value, who buy our chocolate, maybe our dark chocolate because it's good for the heart and all that. So, Senna, there's a whole, we have not changed the status quo with even the cocoa board that we set up. And that is the foundation I want to lay. Before I come to the issues of trading and agribusiness and all that. So, cocoa and its derivative of chocolate is not the most important economic tool that we need as a country. No. If I had my way, 90% of our cocoa farms would have become plantation farms, vice versa to what he's saying. Because I don't want Ghanaian youth capable with the capacity to build ships and build hotels and build schools and create things to go and spend their lives farming in cocoa farms. No. Maybe just 2 or 3% of our population should run the cocoa farms, but efficiently. Modern efficient farms. So that the bulk of our youth will use their minds to develop this continent. Do the other things that we need them to do. Not to find themselves doing slash and burn agriculture with cutlasses and hoe. So, Senna, the structure of the cocoa board and the philosophy around that whole economy is problematic. That is why so many other countries chose other products. Malaysia and Co, they were also doing cocoa. They changed. When you go to Indonesia, the Dutch took cocoa there. They said, no, we'll do palm. Because every meal under the sun has a little bit of oil in it. Every meal. If you fry kose in the morning, there's palm oil. What we call fried oil. It's palm oil based. When you do wache, it will be there. Shito, it will be there. Everything. Fried fish, everything. So they chose another product. cocoa supports rural economies, or such agricultural ventures support rural economies. So those, I mean, all these countries started from that base. They tried to build an agrarian economy and then move quickly into industrialization. That's why Malaysia and Co moved into industry. Because the value of, let's say, garments, the garment industry in a country like Bangladesh, garment gives them about $30 billion a year, employing over 18 million people, half the population of Ghana, in one industry. Can you compare that to cocoa? So when I say it's perpetuation of poverty, I'm not being cynical. I'm actually, or slavery, I'm not being cynical. I'm actually doing a comparison between other jurisdictions and what they have done. Why do you think that the Asians decided to move away from agriculture and go and do manufacturing and compete with Europe and compete with American manufacturing? Very small population is in agriculture. In America, just 4% of the population is in agriculture. And yet they feed the whole America and feed the rest of the world. And then when they have eaten and their bellies are full, they buy our chocolate. So, Sana, these are the problems. Even the inputs of the industry. The inputs of the industry. Jute bags, they come from Bangladesh and India. That's where we buy the jute bags from. There are families whose businesses have been supplying jute bags to Ghana for the last 30 years or 40 years. And every year, that is what feeds their family, and that's how they pay their kids' school fees. We've never been able to develop indigenous jute manufacturing. There are jute factories. People have tried. But because of the political beneficiaries that are in there, we have never been able to allow those industries to grow in Ghana. So I can show you 3 or 4 jute factories. There's even one on the motorway that has been abandoned. At least it was just for the weaving. It's been abandoned. And we still buy from India, from Calcutta, from Bangladesh. I know. I have friends whose families are in this business. They are jute producers in Bangladesh. It's Pahani family. That's one of their biggest business. So, even the fertilizer that we apply on our farms, for the last 60 years or whatever, since Cocoa Board was set up, we've never been able to build an indigenous fertilizer industry so that we can supply the fertilizers that we need and even export to our neighboring countries, just in our region. This is the reality. So what is the value of Cocoa Board in the value of growing the state? Apart from I would say, the romanticized ideas that we have been brought up with from school. And cocoa is the foundation of Ghana, and cocoa is the bedrock of Ghana. Cocoa should not be the bedrock of Ghana. Industrialization and manufacturing should be the bedrock of Ghana. That is what should be. Sena, I used to trade. I'm a trader. I used to trade both physicals and I used to trade futures. I set up a company in the UAE a few years ago, prior to Parliament, as a trader, a proprietary trader. So I've been in this business before. I know the traders. He knows me. I know the traders. I used to trade petroleum products. I trade garments. I've traded, what do you call it, agro products before. Soya bean meal. I have friends who are traders in Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I visited them there before. They used to have what you call pits. You know, pits. So when you go into a pit, they are maybe trading pork feet, this, that. That's just one product. There are thousands of products being traded, including cocoa. I know people who are trading cocoa their whole life, and I've never seen a cocoa bean. They've never even been to Ghana. I know traders, Alan Rothman and Co. They are big traders. They trade our cocoa every day. They have never seen a cocoa farm or seen a bean before. They trade just the receipts, the futures receipts. So you promise to, it's a contract, like they trade the contracts. So I get the contract for 10 cedis, I sell it for 15 cedis, I make 5 cedis, somebody buys it for 5 cedis. The whole contract says that at the end of the day, on this specific date, you would give me the product. That's all. So when you say futures contract, that's all. That's what it's all about. That's all it's all about. I've been in that business before. I've been in that space before. So what has happened to Cocoa Board today is a pure trading decision mistake. It's a decision. It's a trading decision. You took a certain position on the market, and it went against you. Based on the information that you had, the historical information that you had, you took a certain decision, and the decision went against you. That's it. Whether you went long on the market, you went short on the market, that's it. You have made a loss. But we have a situation where Cocoa Board is not able to take the loss and wants to pass the loss to the farmer who has done nothing wrong. He's trusted you as a trader, giving you all the rights, giving you all his life, giving you all his sweat, giving you all the produce, because you are the only buyer in this market. Even the LBCs are funded by you. You fund them to go and buy. It's a pure monopoly. And then the European traders who buy from you are sitting there and watching. Today you can even have satellite data on all the cocoa in Ghana. And you can know the volumes that will come out next year without even moving from your table. There are specialized companies that do that. Some of these young Peace Corps people that you see coming around, walking around, you think they just work, they like living in the bush for nothing, or they stay in our villages for nothing. No, they are doing research. Some of them are doing research. Not all of them. Some of them are doing data research, walking through the cocoa growing areas and finding out whether the volumes are coming next year or not coming next year, and then they tell their principals, and they'll take a certain position on the market. So it is a trading decision that has gone wrong, and that is what we should be telling the truth to the farmer. That truth is what we should be telling the farmer. When there's a profit, Cocoa Board takes the profit. Why should the farmer now take the loss? When Cocoa Board makes a windfall, when they were selling at $10,000 per ton, did they pass the price to the farmer? No. So why should the farmer take the loss? It should tell the farmer something. It should tell them something that, look, you are actually better off selling your own product. We have created a system where it's like the farmer's rights. The farmers have rights. Why should he tie his rights down to a loss-making venture? It may be just one in many. But I can tell you, this decision that the government took is going to be the Achilles heel of this government in the next election. The people are not going to forgive the government. It will be very difficult to go and explain this to the farmer on the ground, especially when you've promised him a certain price, waited for him to agitate before you. In fact, what is happening today is no different from what happened in 1937 when the farmers went on strike for 8 months, because they don't feel that they're going to get fair value for their produce. People have borrowed in advance of the promise that you made them. People have borrowed, taken loans, soft loans, even payday loans. Because we all know that, they're going to be paid 3,000 and above. He's bought some things, taken some loans, paid for his kids to go to school. His son is in the university, his second son is in secondary school. Today you are telling him that you're going to pay him less than that. So, Senna, this is going to be a shock to all our farmers. What are the reforms that the government is proposing? PBC. Well, the LBCs are doing that job already. Do you think the state needs to be in that space again to be able to make it better? No. Cocoa Board is a regulator of the industry. I think it should stay as a regulator and have a completely separate company as a trader with the expertise that is needed there. In fact, I've heard that the new MD sacked some of the experienced traders from the place. If that is true, it's unfortunate, or has moved them around. If that is true, then it's very unfortunate, because it will vindicate them, and maybe one of the reasons why we are seeing what we are seeing. So we should have a completely separate desk for trading. I know they have CMC, but it should become an independent entity from the regulator. some of the offshoots of Cocoa Board after 30 years should become independent. The research arm should become very, very independent of the regulator. They should be able to develop into other products and grow in their own light. And not just be, it's like having, let me bring it back maybe to the petroleum space. Having something like NPA, that is also owning a filling station, selling petroleum, being a BDC, being an OMC, you know, or a football match where the players are also the referees. It does not, for me, it doesn't sit well. So, the reforms that the government is talking about are not new. That will let our local buyers buy 50%, our local producers buy 50% of the produce. These are not new. It's been done already. All the small crop, the secondary crop, are sold to our local producers. It's about 40% of the crop. As we speak, 60% of our cocoa still ends up in Britain. Just as had been there 100 years ago. Nothing really has changed. People say, oh, bring back the syndicated loan. What is a syndicated loan? You put your heads together, you go to a bank, you tell him that I want X amount. Once you tell him the amount that you are looking for, he can compute the volumes that you bring onto the market and determine the price that you buy from you this year and next year. So why do that? You are better off spending your own cedis on your farmers, buying your produce, hoarding some, selling some, releasing it onto the market as and when you think you want to release it onto the market. Then to go and take a syndicated loan. That is what we should be thinking. And maybe to take you from what Nkrumah, that's why Nkrumah built those silos in Tema. I drive past them every day. His idea was to use it as a leverage. The Saudis do it. The OPEC people do it. They reduce the flow of oil onto the market whenever they feel that the price is dropping and there's excess on the market. So we all listen to them when they say they are shutting the taps and reducing their flow. We know that the prices will go up. Then you place your trade. Maybe you buy long and wait and put your stop losses, and then you move on. So this is what we should be doing, especially when between us and our neighboring country, Cote d'Ivoire, 60% of, the best cocoa in the world is from between the two of us. Regardless of all the issues that I've raised, including priority of what you would use your resources for. So, Senna, my colleague here, said a lot, and maybe took the wind out of my sail. I don't want to take too much of your time, but he also made mention of something that I want to draw our attention to, about Olam. Olam was started in Nigeria by a trader. Came to sit in Nigeria. He was working for his uncle, an old Indian man. Now he's an old Indian man, but then he was a young man, 27-year-old. His uncle brought him to Nigeria, and he started selling. He didn't go into the oil space where everybody was fighting for. He went selling or buying cocoa, all the other things, palm nuts, all the other things that people in Nigeria were discarding because they preferred to follow oil or crude oil. And then he built Olam slowly, started from Nigeria and expanded. He moved it to Singapore because Singapore gave him a very good, tax opportunity. So he moved it to Singapore. And then Temasek invested in it. Obviously, if you are climbing a good tree, people will push you. So it is not a state-owned entity, as my brother said. It is a purely private entity listed on the stock exchange that a state investment arm has shares in there. Exactly. So it's a model we can also look at. We can develop our own LBCs to become like Olam. And let them move from not just buying cocoa, but maybe buying other things, including soya bean, palm kernel, all those other things, and develop themselves locally as well. So, Senna, beyond this, we should also look at the wider implications of, let's say, even government buying cocoa at this stage, when the government wants to actually keep inflation at 3.8. You know, the government is trying very hard to keep inflation at a single digit. how if government is to pay them that much, maybe 6,000 per ton, as he had promised during the election last year in 2024. The NDC government promised the people of the farmers of Ghana, or cocoa farmers of Ghana, 6,000.
At the prices at the time.
Obviously, at the prices at the time. So, but if they are going to pay the producer price that they gave them this year of 3,000, it would affect this single-digit inflation that we want to target. The 3.8, it will affect it because there will be a lot of cities on the market chasing fewer goods. In fact, the whole idea of this government's economic management is to mop up cash from the economy than to pump in cash. So it is going to have an effect on inflation targeting, which I think is one of the reasons why maybe the unpublic reasons why the government is not in a position to pay them fully. Beyond that too, also to meet IMF's requirements for us to exit the program. The inflation targeting is part of the requirements to exit the program. So all these factors may have contributed to the decision to reduce or give the farmers this haircut. Just as my brother said, if we are to look at it from a very broad perspective, it will be very unfair on the Ghanaian farmer, especially the cocoa farmer, for the sacrifices that they have made over the years, the wealth that they have brought to this country. At least in every year is about $1 billion to $2 billion worth of hard cash that comes into our economy from their sweat and tears. So the government should have looked at that and used that as an excuse to meet them and pay them what he had promised, so that joy of waking up in the morning to go and sweat on the farm and work hard for the people, for us, would continue. Farmers will be able to, be happy to wake up in the morning and go to work, so that we would all benefit at the end of the day. We have all benefited one way or the other from cocoa. Many of us have benefited from cocoa scholarships, even though we have not seen cocoa farms before, worked on cocoa farms before. Many of us have benefited from cocoa scholarships or cocoa hospitals. In fact, the closest cocoa hospital, one of the biggest cocoa hospitals, is very close by us. It's here in Accra, and there's one in Sefi. I don't know whether there's any one in the eastern region. Cocoa hospital. I don't know whether there's one in the north. What do you call it? The other cocoa growing areas. Oti. Central region. Yet people in Accra are benefiting from it. We want the managers of Cocoa Board to also take a haircut and show solidarity with our farmers. They should also take a haircut. Maybe something similar to what Senna has on his head. Sakura. Yes. So that they show solidarity with the people of Ghana and the farmers at this very difficult time in their lives. Senna, on that note, I would want to bring my submission to an end and allow my colleague to also continue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, this is okay. In case you join us, that's Nino Hansen, not with some member of Parliament for Tema Central. On the discussion on cocoa, just about 2 comments from Facebook. Says this from Eric Okusapano says, "Good morning. I support the cocoa industry reform bill by the government's value chain retention policy. The colonial government gadgets back new colonial economy must be dismantled and buried with its variants. We must serve probity and accountability on those who ruin the cocoa industry." And goes ahead to mention Hackman, also Mr. Edu, CEO of Cocoa Board, and then Sadis, former governor of the BOG. There's Francis Gordon who says, let us put all the good ideas together to save the cocoa industry. Cocoa has been the blood that's been running Ghana's economy for a very long time, and we cannot afford to let it down, but do everything right to save the industry. Happy chocolate day to all Ghanaians, and of course there's a happy Valentine's Day. Then one on YouTube, this one says, usage of cocoa is not only confined to confectionaries as chocolate, but also widely used in pharmaceutical, cosmetics, and medicine production, you see. Thank you very much for sending us. And this one also says, okay, someone saved money for over 30 years, and Ofoyata and Adudankwa gave them a haircut. Some are in their graves. You are saying haircut. So I think he's responding to you. Well, Laura. Good morning.
I'm a bit colorblind. What's the color of your is it
How about you wearing glasses? Your glasses does not cater for them.
I said I'm colorblind.
Okay.
Okay, so
He has confirmed.
it's ready. I just want to be sure. Okay, so happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Senna is really spending the Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all your lovely viewers. And good morning to Adakwa, comrade Adakwa, and my brother Ni. But I've enjoyed both of their submissions, very, very deep. And must appreciate Adakwa's in-depth knowledge in the cocoa and Ni's. In fact, when I listen to me, the only question I asked, I just had one question. Why is my brother not with us? You understand? Because apart from the bit where he sought to heap some small pressure on the current administration, which in my honest view is unfair, I agree with everything he said. And everything he said is what Alan Chemantin and when we were moving for change and when we were UP has been saying all this while about the need for us to diversify our economy. Because you see, when you add the figures, it doesn't make sense that we are still building Ghana or Ghana is a cocoa economy. Because cocoa in every year gives us just about $2 billion, I think. Yeah, just 2 billion.
Yeah, yes.
Now, textiles gives Bangladesh almost about 25 billion. Palm, oil palm. Singapore and Malaysia came to Ghana to study how to produce oil palm, and they've added value addition, and right now they are controlling that sector. And like he rightly said, everything you do would require what's called oil. When he was trade minister, he proposed 10 strategic anchor industries. 10. But Nebu, His Excellency Nebu, His Excellency Nebu, His Excellency Nebu, who held the power of fiscal policy together, 2024, I was calling somebody Abusan Samana here. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Salarize. AKA salarize. AKA salarize. AKA salarize. They did not see the need to use their power of fiscal policy to support the 10 strategic anchor industry policy proposed by Honorable Alan Chemantin. They didn't support it. And when they won the future was a small part. They just spent 400 million Ghana cedis there and 5 billion on a useless policy like NAPCO. And so I agree with you perfectly. Unfortunately, your people won't see eye to eye with you. Because I knew you before you started doing politics. I've seen how you've done your politics. I've had the privilege of sharing platforms with you. And I'm more than convinced that your politics is with Ghana at heart. You do politics like how Aristotle said, that the end of politics is to create virtuous men. Unfortunately, the house that you reside in, they see politics in the eyes of Niccolo Machiavelli. Their aim is not to create virtuous men. Their aim, sadly, is one: how do we get power, and how do we sustain ourselves in power? And you see, so unlike me, so Ni spent most of his time to talk about the need for us to diversify, because really that's the issue. Or even if we do cocoa, then we shouldn't just be at the bottom of the value chain. Because we talk about, because when you take Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, between the two of us, for a very long time, we produce more than 60% of all the cocoa in the world. And yet when you take the chocolate industry, which is about 129 billion economy, all of Africa's contribution in that industry is about 6%. All of Africa, our contribution there is, or what we get, what we benefit, our benefit is just about 6%. And so simple common sense will tell you that, listen, it's not about just doing the cocoa, but there's a need for us to invest also in value addition. Now, you know what is even more confusing and very sad and makes our politicians, the fact that they have not seen the wisdom in going to value addition, is the fact that if you, when you go to the chocolate industry, they have what you call the Cadbury standard. So every cocoa, every chocolate has, they measure the quality of your chocolate by the Cadbury standard. And you know what determines the Cadbury standard? How much of Ghana's cocoa is in your chocolate. So the more of Ghana's cocoa that is in your chocolate, the more quality, the presumption that your chocolate, not presumption, because so that's how they, that's how they keep standards. And we in Ghana, the contour of our chocolate, of our cocoa in people's chocolates determines the value placed on your chocolate. And yet, how much have we played in the chocolate industry? Yesterday I listened to the Minister of Agri. He said that as in the factories in Ghana totally has the capacity to produce over 500,000 tons of cocoa. Now the capacity now, I don't know, because some of the machines will be is about 300,000, and yet they are unable to produce because there's no bean for them. So you go to Barry and the rest, they import beans to produce. And I can tell you that all these things largely happen under the watch of Nebu. I can tell you they happen under the watch of Nebu. Nebu came to meet Cocoa Board. And once again, let me say this. I agree with your views also about Cocoa Board and how the Cocoa Board has really been impoverished. I agree. That notwithstanding, when Nebu took over the reins of government, Cocoa Board had a profit of, sometimes we say equity, we confuse the grassroots. It's profit in Fasol, profit of 1.8 billion. When Nebu left power, the losses at Cocoa Board amounted to 32.5 billion. Not so. So where the problem right now, and then again I must also agree with my brother here. When we go to the Cocoa Board, it's our trading. Yes. One of the fundamental, and you know he spoke about futures, about forward contracts and all. So you agree you agree a contract to perform at a future date, but you agree on the pricing and on the now. Mm. And so you can make mistakes there. So they entered into a futures agreement, agreed on the price, I think 2,500. And by the time you realize the price had moved up to about 10,000. So that 10,000, we didn't benefit, did we? We didn't benefit. You understand? Who took that decision? Under which watch? Under which government's watch? Was it JM? It was Nebu's people. It was Nebu's people. You understand? But because, and two, they left Cocoa Board at a loss. Why? Because when they get the money from the cocoa, they then decide, because you see, cocoa for a very long time, cocoa for a very long time has been the backbone of our fiscal policy. For a very long time. You see what cocoa rows, they spend some to go and do cocoa rows. In fact, the rows, we are not seeing them, but they claim they've spent money there. Then they spend some of the money to go and buy jute bags. You understand? In fact, they sometimes to do their parochial policy, they can buy jute bags for like 50 years. You understand? Do all manner of projects without taking care of the people who are directly in the chain. And when you do what's called a relativity analysis of the world market price as against how much goes to the cocoa farmer, then the only conclusion you can come to is what moral authority does the NPP have to be organizing the press conferences they are organizing? And they organize their press conferences, and the analysis they make is not up to even 10% of what my brother Nee here is talking about. And that's what I'm asking, why is he there? He should join us, because I can see that in terms of his philosophy about governance, in terms of his understanding, he aligns more to us than to them. I'm telling you. Oh, which one? From last week I've taken over. From last week I've taken over. They don't even understand what they're doing. Oh, don't touch me. You know, don't touch me. Comes down, Samana. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. The round one. He's the one now leading. They would left the party to don't touch me. And he's leading. You see the what's it called? The kind of Machiavellian press conferences they are having. Because when they saw the problem they largely caused, they saw an opportunity to spin the issue without proposing reforms, so that they can make this government unpopular. Then they will have a best chance of coming to power again. To do what? I don't blame them. I don't blame them. When you come to power from 2025, and when in the first State of the Nation address, you tell us that there's a 32 billion loss. When you, fortunately, you were the same president, when you were leaving, there was a profit of about 1.8 billion, and you do not ask for any forensic audits to be done. You do not ask. Then these people, who are the masters of propaganda, they've mastered the art of Machiavellian politics. Then they'll spin it. They'll spin it and heap fire and brimstone on you for a problem they caused without thinking about solutions. Yesterday I saw the reforms they proposed. When you are considering just the cocoa sector, there are reforms that really you can't really argue against. Because even now you are telling us that there's a guaranteed 70% what's called of the price to the farmers as in base. You are telling us there's an automatic adjustment. They are positive steps. But if you are thinking like me is thinking, I'm thinking. Then, and when you look at the bigger picture, then you cannot talk about just these reforms without also tackling the issue about the need for us to diversify our economy. Because that's the bigger problem. That's the bigger problem. That's the bigger problem. You understand? So, you see, we ought to elevate our politics. We don't want to be doing, and at time the price was this, and at time the price was this, and you do that useless banter. Very useless banter. When at the end of the day, what's the essence of cocoa? The essence of cocoa is in its ability to transform Ghana. But if that's the essence of it, then you should also look at all the various opportunities, be they commodity, because right now America has taught us that sometimes that in fact our brain is even a bigger commodity than all the commodities. Because when we talk about AI and in the 90s, the IT boom, it was people's ability to create things in their mind. Silicon Valley. You understand? So when you talk about transformation, the focus shouldn't just even be on commodities. But what policy do you have that will create virtuous men? People who are so creative, so innovative, that we can transform Ghana, not just on the back of commodities. Because cocoa alone, based on our history, and I appreciate that question, I was listening to you, actually, this is my comedy here. When you are being too much, it's too sharp. Give the history. Because talk about very serious things in this country. Takrady Harbor. What funds did we use to create Takrady Harbor? I was privileged to have gone to Achimota School. What funding did they use to establish Achimota School? One of the biggest hospitals I have in West Africa, Kolebu. University of Ghana. So many others. In fact, when you go to Kumasi, proud to 47 and how we have funded cocoa ever since. The rich men in this country were the cocoa farmers. The wealthy men in Ghana were the cocoa farmers. So you go to Asafo, you go to Bantama, all the huge mansions there. You understand? But you see, there's a kind of politics we do here, and I'm not going to mention Kwame Nkrumah's name. I'm not going to mention Kwame Nkrumah's name because the governments that have come subsequent to Kwame Nkrumah have even done worse. Because in Ghana, I don't know why. You see, I keep on mentioning Aristotle. And I keep on mentioning Aristotle because Aristotle has a definition of politics, a view of politics. That's at the end of politics. Understand? Now, if you do politics and you see the end as in creating virtuous men, and you go into the virtuous men of who a virtuous man is, you understand? He must be a man of integrity. He must be a man of, you understand? He must have a free mind. But he must also be a wealthy man. Well, it's easier for you to have integrity and to put the interest of the nation when you yourself are able to on your own. You get the picture. In Ghana, I find something very, very unfortunate. Our politicians here do a Machiavellian politics because their only view is how can I get power and how can I sustain myself in power. And so they are scared of wealth. So if you have wealth which was not facilitated by the politicians, they're likely to come after you and destroy it and destroy you deliberately. And that's why you see that there's a cycle. When MPP comes to power, some people automatically become wealthy. When NDC comes to power, they go down. The new wealthy people. What kind of devilish politics are we doing? So if you want to benefit from cocoa and also from all other commodities, and if you want to transform this nation, then there's a need for us to create a system where people who want to do politics for the right reasons, which is to create virtuous men, to create wealthy men. We must deliberately create wealthy men. We must do that. Now, yeah, the politics is to impoverish people. So right now, the cocoa farmers who elsewhere were very wealthy are now poor. Are you aware that the average age of your cocoa farmer now today is 64 years? No young man wants to do cocoa. But my father was a cocoa farmer. And my father became General Secretary of Farmers Council before he was 30 years. So imagine when the farmers were so wealthy, what will make a 30-day agree that you a small boy, 30 years, you know Ghana here, if you are 30 years, they say you're a small boy, to be their General Secretary, because he was also doing cocoa big time. But we've destroyed them because of politics. Because of our Machiavellian politics. We have this. Now no young person wants to do cocoa. We see the Galamsey issue. People are selling their cocoa farms to Galamseyers. Why? Because we all want to be virtuous men. We all want to be wealthy people. So if he thinks that Galamsey will give me more money than the cocoa, and we have very weak systems, so government Galamsey, which is a criminal activity, the government is so weak that it is unable to enforce the law. So they'll sell their farms to the Galamseyers. Because when you do cocoa, like my brother said, slavery, you become poor. What kind of country are we building? And these people, Nebu's descendants, Nebu's assistants, who helped Nebu to destroy Ghana and the cocoa, will have the cojones to be organizing press conferences. But don't do that. Listen, His Excellency Johama, I know it's better late than never. Let them investigate them. Just scratch your back and scratch my back politics we do here. Scratch your back, then you scratch my back. Now because they are spending this on you, now you see the need for you to do an investigation. The problem is that investigation may lack legitimacy. Because people will start questioning you. But if they had not raised the issues they were raising, would you have seen the need to go after them? When you're operating under a constitution who has as one of its fundamental principles the principle of probity and accountability, you have to sit down for these people. Just imagine, do you know how much it will cost to set up a world-class plantation, cocoa plantation? Let's take the production side. About 5 million USD. World-class, big one, huge one. Nebu spent 97 million to dig a hole. 97 million to dig a hole. So you do the calculation for me. You are the engineer. To do it here. So imagine 20 world-class farms. You know how much it will cost to do an ultra-modern, huge cocoa chocolate processing factory? About $200 million. That's very big. For medium.
Very terrible size.
Yeah. So Nebu will just add $100 million to it, and we'll have a world-class factory. But he dug a hole. He dug a hole. The hole is still there. $97 million. $97 million. And his cohorts. You see, Dwight Eisenhower said that leadership is about having a vision, a dream, and be able to identify the right people to carry that vision through. See, at least we've been listening to Nee, and it's not because Nee was my client and he's my friend. But one of the things I wanted over the last 4 or 5 years, because you see, when you're also a political party, you want to create a situation where there'll be proper handing over to the next generation. So you have a very young man, very sharp, and he's not just sharp because he's read books. He's sharp also because he's actually handled the things he's saying. Why did they not make him a minister? No, so if you consider some of the people who are ministers, and this is, I'm not disrespecting anybody, because we need to build a country that's based on meritocracy. Because see, when you have the right people at the helms of affairs, and they do well, and the right people will be likely to do well, who does it benefit? Does it benefit just them? No. But see, the spirit of Nebu, the spirit of Machiavellian, that spirit, it does not want correct people. Because how can you tell my brother here that in spite of all you know, everything you know, in spite of everything you've practiced, do contrary to everything you know, he won't agree. So they will relegate and to allow certain people, or I don't mention names, because the NAPCO policy, if I tell you the person who advised the vice president to adopt a policy and they found a name called NAPCO, you'll be shocked. Stark illiterate. Who says, I'll mention the person's name, because of lawyer-client relationship. Well, that person was my client. A very senior man in the MPP, but stark illiterate. So we can't create jobs. What if we do a system where we're giving young graduates 700 and then they fund for it? NAPCO. That's how NAPCO was established. And these people have the cockroach audacity to be organizing press conferences to say what? Well, it's better late than never. You may have gone round, but at some point in time you must draw the line and say let's start. And that's the basis for the reforms. See, I personally think that is not enough. But if I'm doing policies of comparing, then it's better than anything they did. Because ultimately, then we should go with what he is saying. And Allah has been saying this for a very long time. He tried under President Kufuor, and people within the party, within the boost cohorts, they fought against it. I remember that under the President Special Initiative, there were plans to have this palm plantations, the cassava, garments, and all the. How did those positive agendas? Why did they struggle? It was not because of the NDC in opposition. There were people within the MPP who felt that if we allow this young man to carry these things through, then there's no way we can challenge him if he says he wants to be president. I'm telling you. And there are things I have. Sometimes I wonder why people must write books. My own brother Lanchimantin must write a book and must tell Ghanaians, the saboteurs, not just within MPP, but within Ghana. Because Ghana is the only reason why we should do politics. And so if you are thinking about your internal party struggles and say, no, if we allow this young man to use his wisdom to the benefit of everybody. Yeah, you understand? I'm not in the same party with me. I want him in my party. But in future, if you just say because of, from what I personally know, and he possibly said that like this, I want to. I won't mind supporting him. Why? Because the only reason why we ought to do politics is Ghana. And so if you have the ability, you have the commitment, you have the integrity, and you have the vision, and you pop your head up, we shouldn't have a problem supporting the person, irrespective of their political coloring. That's how we should do politics here. You understand? But you see the negativity. So I'm going to, I'll tell His Excellency, we support your reforms. Even within the cocoa sector, I don't think it's enough. Because you should, that the monopoly you spoke about, it's also a hindrance. You can buy government can buy the cocoa, but allow the farmers also to do their personal trading if they have the capacity to do. Don't force everybody to by force sell their cocoa to you. I even think that if it flies against the constitution, the property rights under the terms of our constitution. So they must do proper deregulation. But so and that's just with the cocoa. And they must, as a matter of urgency, also think seriously about diversifying our economy. I heard in the budget that they had a plan for palm plantations. That's a very positive step. Very positive. That's if I'm doing comparative analysis between Nebu and Abosam Samuna on one end, and His Excellency John Mahama, it's like day and night. It's like day and night. You shouldn't even compare. What less would you have to compare? 97 million whole. 97 million whole. You shouldn't even compare. So, not to take our time. You see, the people of Ghana, at the end of the day, we are the repository of power, of sovereignty. And we have the ability to alter how politics is done. That's why I keep on talking about the rights political culture. It's at the foundation of all of this. Because if it's a true democracy, then we should have the power to tell politicians how we want our politics done. Let us take hold of this opportunity. Let us create an environment which would promote or will create more people who do politics that has the interest of Ghana at heart. People who do politics with the focus of creating virtuous men. When we do that, it means that they will also create an environment where the Machiavellians of this world, the Nebus of this world, the Bunsan Samanas of this world, people who spend 97 million on holes, will find it practically impossible to survive in the political environment we have there. When we have done that, there also have people where, irrespective of where your party is, where government has come up with policies which are positive, you support and not just oppose. When we've done that, then we'll be poised as a country, as a people, to take our rightful place as the black star of Africa.
For bringing us together to discuss these issues. How I wish I don't do a quick bite on cocoa, because cocoa is big. Cocoa is the lifeline of our country and the lifeline of millions of our people and several households. And so it's very important when we discuss it, particularly as today is Valentine's Day and it's called Chocolate Day. And so you talk about chocolate, you talk about cocoa, and we have had to discuss this matter at this crucial time. It's rather sad and very unfortunate how far we have come in terms of our cocoa sector. And verily I say that the problems of the cocoa sector today, even though has not been something new, we are in the current crisis today, and I'm going to explain to you what actually the crisis is. Because of the reckless mismanagement, careless running of the cocoa board. And I put the blame right at the doorstep of the MPP. And so just a few days ago, when I saw them do the press conference, I cringed. I was shocked, because at least somebody come of shame should grip human beings, in the conduct of affairs. And I didn't expect them to hold a press conference at all, because it was a total bad case for them. First of all, this is a government that took a cocoa board that was making profits of about 1.8 million Ghana cedi to a point where cocoa board made long streak of losses over 8 years.
No single period did they make profits, and the only time they claim they posted profit, I'm going to tell you how they posted that profit. And so you would see that in the history of this country from 2021 coming up to 2024, they posted in 2021 199 million Ghana cedi loss. Then the following year 395 million cedis. Then the following year 78 million cedi loss. The next year 275 million cedi loss, and the final year 426 million cedis loss. And in 2022-2023 season, they claim they posted some $2.9 billion profit. I don't know if you remember. What happened was that because of the debt crisis, the cocoa bills we were not able to pay from 2021 to 2022. They had accumulated the cocoa bills and even debt owed to LBCs for 9 months. Never in the history of this country has Cocoa Board owed the LBCs, the license buying companies, over 9 months, and they had not paid. That happened at the time. And you know what they had to do? All the cocoa bills or the cocoa bonds that they had raised to finance the sector, they had to restructure under the DDEP. Moved all the debts that they were supposed to pay in 2022-2023 to 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. So they restructured and moved all the debt, and that was the proper haircut. That was the time the haircut was done. So everybody who had bought the cocoa bills, the bond, you received the haircut, and they were moved to 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028 at a coupon rate of 12.5%. And they claimed that after they moved all the debts that they were supposed to pay, the debt obligation of about 4 billion that year, they claimed that they have made profit of 2.9 million Ghana cedi. That was how bad, Senna, the situation was. And look, this is just as a result of clear mismanagement and lack of purpose. Why am I saying that? In the first 4 years of the Akufo-Addo regime, they didn't increase the price of cocoa on the market, the terminal price to the farmer. It was not increased, it was maintained 4 years. So in 2021 they started moving from 600 Ghana cedi, then they moved to 800 Ghana cedi, then they moved to 2,000, then finally they ended at 3,000. Now see what had happened to the price of cocoa on the international market. The price of cocoa on the international market was galloping at the time. In fact, it galloped up to the point that we're buying cocoa at $12,000 US. $12,000 US. On the futures market, 12,000. On the spot market, at the point it was 12,000. And at the time, guess what was happening to the cocoa farmer and the price of cocoa? We were paying the cocoa farmer less than 21% of that FOB price. And you know what resulted in that? What resulted in that was that the Akufo-Addo government went to lock Ghana in what we call the futures market, a forward sale of our cocoa at some $3,200 from 2021, 2022 to 2023. And guess what? As if that was not enough, at the time the price was selling at $9,600, they locked Ghana in another contract at $2,600. When the cocoa is being sold on the international market at $9,600, you go and lock the nation in a contract at $2,600. Then they came to us to deceive us that, oh, they have increased the cocoa price to 3,000 and it is 76% of the price of cocoa. It was 76% of the terminal price they were selling the cocoa, which is 2,600. But the price on the spot market was 9,600. And even if at the time they were going to do a futures arrangement, the futures price on the international cocoa exchange was $12,000. Who does that to his country? Who does that to his people? And guess what? They projected that they were going to sell 800,000 metric tons of cocoa in 2024. They sold 781,000 in forward sales at 2,600 Ghana cedis. Look at how wicked they are. 780,000 in forward sales when you could have even done maybe half spots and half forward sales. They did 781,000 on forward sales at 2,600. Guess what? They couldn't supply. So they left a rollover of about 333,000. The first time in the history of cocoa board in 78 years when cocoa board has had to do a rollover to the tune of about 333,000 metric tons. Let me see that. And government, the NDC government, would have to take this burden in 2025 and make sure that the cocoa they sold at $2,600, we are going to buy the cocoa at $7,200 and go and supply. How can you survive? So you signed the forward sales, collected the money, chopped the money on frivolous things, used the money on useless things. Then we would come in and have to go and use hard-earned cash, $72,000, to go and buy the cocoa and come and supply that 330,000. President Mahama said, look, we have inherited it. So let's find a strategic way of dealing with this. And so now guess what we did? What we decided to do was that so that we balance the finances of cocoa board, whilst we buy for the season, let's try as much as possible to buy enough to supply so that we don't lose our relationships on the international market, but most importantly also bring comfort to the farmer and be able to buy enough. And so last year our estimated yield that we were looking at was $650,000, 650,000 metric tons. We may likely go a little beyond that. But when we started buying, we bought about 580,000 metric tons. And out of the 580,000 metric tons that we bought, we supplied almost about 250,000 to 260,000 metric tons to clear off the rollover. Then we had to supply the market also. But the challenge then we had was that at the point when we were buying the cocoa, it was 7,200. Now immediately the price started dropping. And so between August last year, October, then subsequent November, December, we saw that the price was dropping very quickly. But within 1 month, it dropped from 7,200 to 5,800. Now the current cocoa spot price is 3,700. And the cocoa that we have bought, the 580, we have bought it at 7,200. We have used some to offset the 2,600 forward sales they did. And the rest we are holding. Who would buy your cocoa that you bought at 7,200 on the international market when it is being sold for 3,700? So then cocoa board will obviously go into liquidity challenges, because the cocoa that you have purchased, you are even unable to trade that cocoa, because when you trade that cocoa you can't pay your farmers. And you know the cocoa regime in Ghana, the LBCs are allowed to go for financing to buy the cocoa. Then cocoa board pays them. Some of them pay from the financing they have secured. Some too, they go and credit from the cocoa farmers. Then when cocoa board pays them, they go back and pay the farmers. Cocoa board is having this crisis. How can cocoa board get the financing and the liquidity to be able to pay these LBCs? We are unable to do that. And so government says that, okay, because of the fact that the price is coming down, we don't know where it's going to end. But government must take immediate decision. One, to save the farmer, and two, also to save the sector. So why don't we go back to some reforms and rethink our whole cocoa strategy? Because you are now holding the cocoa you bought for 7,600 and nobody is going to buy. Meanwhile, let me tell you one irony about the cocoa industry. Ivory Coast and Ghana, we produce 65% of the world's cocoa. 65%, these two countries. The global value of the cocoa market is $142 billion. And are you aware that Ghana and Ivory Coast, that produces the 65%, earns less than 2% of the global value? Why? Because we do not add value, we only sell the beans. Now the market dynamics of the bean sales is that when you sell the beans to those foreign markets and they add the value, they are able to get the full potential of the value of the cocoa. Now there are local processing industries as well. The local processing industries, because of the demand of Ghana's premium cocoa on the international market, cocoa board will not sell the premium cocoa to you when they have locked themselves in forward sales and they have to deliver. In fact, in the past 8 years, all we have done is forward sales. Sometimes we do it 2 years in advance. And so you cannot get some of the cocoa for the local processing industries.
The worst of it all is that in the minor season, which we call the light crop, which light crop usually is not demanded on the international market, the local processing companies used to procure that and use it for processing so that they can get our golden tree chocolate and all those things onto the markets. Guess what happened in the last 8 years? It got to a point in time that the light crop we were exporting, because we have locked ourselves so much that sometimes we have to supply the light crop, so they were not getting, and so they had to go and take permission from Cocoa Board again to go and import from Nigeria, from Benin, and from Ivory Coast to be able to process. In that case, all the jobs that they have in those industries are jobs that were not sustained, and so they usually do not produce throughout the year. And so President Mahama is saying that, look, if indeed we have to get the full value of the cocoa that we are producing, let's look at local processing. But how do we do that? Why don't we take advantage of this crisis? And this crisis is actually being engineered by market dynamics controlled by the giants. This price that is going down is the giants. They buy the cocoa, so they give you this artificial shortage. Okay, we don't want it, we will not buy. Then you are forced to now adjust and come down, and it's an exchange. That's what determines demand and supply. That determines the pricing, and that's why the past 1 year has been dropping. It's just been dropping. And look, they can go as low as $1,000 if you are not careful. And so we as a country must also hold the value of what we have. If we are processing 50% as the president has directed, and Cocoa Board is ensuring that all the cocoa, whether the main crop or the light crop, is going to the local industry, it will shock them, because they will not also be able to produce sustainably. And even the announcement alone that we did just last 3 days, you will see how it will affect the market. If indeed we are able to put action to it, and all the cocoa that we have bought and they are not ready to pick, we move them to the processing companies, they will start running. Remember, the market is broad. Some of the big giants, they have even local LBCs that they give funding to direct to buy for them. Now, if they realize that Ghana is processing 50% of our cocoa, they will now be forced to change their business model. They may probably now decide to buy intermediate products or finished products and move away from the beans, which would also move the beans market and increase our margins for the 50% of the beans that will move to the market. And so this is carefully thought through, strategic decision, strategic reform that we are putting in place. And these reforms are not only on the sale and the processing. We are looking at comprehensively restructuring Cocoa Board. Because look, the situation at Cocoa Board is sad. So now, you have the case whereby in 2021, the government imported bales of cocoa sacks. The bales of cocoa sacks that they were imported and brought from the port to the warehouse is the same cocoa sacks they have used from 2022, 2023, 2024, and when we came, there were 94,000 of those bales in the warehouse. We have used them for 2025, and there is still enough 75,000 to use for 2026. As if that was not enough. As if that was not enough. The same Cocoa Board now ordered another batch of the sacks in 2022, 2023, 2024. And in 2024, just 4 days before they left office, they raised a letter of credit, $48 million, for another batch of cocoa sacks to be brought in. So now, if this is not wickedness, then what is wickedness? This is clear case of abro, killing the nation. Who does that to his own country of birth? So now, who does that to his own country of birth? You waste money to this tune. When Cocoa Board is in crisis, you are giving cocoa contracts of about 26 billion Ghana cedi. And you know that every year your average allocation for cocoa contracts, cocoa road contracts is 400 million. And within 1 year, you give contracts of about 26 billion, which will take almost about 40 years to pay if you are going to allocate 400 million every year. So now, who does that to his country? And yet these same people, and honorable, I think maybe it's a good time to be out of parliament. Your colleagues in parliament are very shameful and they are shameless. to even hold those press conferences they held the other day. And they know all these facts. They know all these issues. This reckless spending, locking the nation into this difficulty, creating a mess, collapsing the institution. Are you aware that the current liabilities as at 24 of Cocoa Board is almost 20.2 billion Ghana cedi? Liabilities, I'm talking about current liabilities. Non-current liabilities have not come. Non-current liabilities have not come. And that is why we owe about $32 billion. Now you have a government that is restructuring this, restructuring the whole sector. This business of cocoa roast and all those contracts that you have given, President has directed that because it's on the books of Cocoa Board, it makes them uncompetitive. If you look at the balance sheet of Cocoa Board, you would weep. You would put your hands on your head. Your total equity in 2024 was in deficit of about 3.8 billion cedis. Never in the history of this country has that happened. 3.8 billion your deficit in terms of equity. In 2016, when we were leaving Cocoa Board, our equity was 1.79 billion Ghana cedi surplus. Then you come and take the sector, collapse it to this level, and you say we should clap for you. You have done well. Why is government reducing? Never have we reduced the price. When have we had any government deteriorate the cocoa sector like Akufo-Addo has done? So now you are aware that this same Cocoa Board, this criminally minded authorities of Cocoa Board and the MPP Bawumia Akufo-Addo government, yes, Bawumia Akufo-Addo government, and Bawumia was the head of the economic management team. And Cocoa Board is significant economic crop, and no discussion of the economic management team is ever made without Cocoa Board. And Bawumia supervised this Cocoa Board, rot. You know, our total plantation of cocoa in this country over the years, because of the swollen shoe disease.
On this point on the cocoa matter, so
the cocoa is too broad. I think that you may have to ask your producers to give us more time to discuss cocoa, because it's very broad.
No, we are finished with the discussion.
You see, the reason why Ivory Coast has overtaken Ghana and they are producing 2 million metric tons, and we struggle to even reach the 1 million metric tons as we were doing in the past, is simply because we have failed to manage the cocoa swollen shoe disease. So most of the existing cocoa, we lose them. So we brought in a program called the Cocoa Rehabilitation Project. In fact, before we left office, we had raised 20 million cocoa seedlings under the cocoa rehabilitation, and we had rehabilitated about 20% of the total cocoa before we left office. Now, in the last 8 years, about 40% of the total cocoa plantation has required rehabilitation. Guess what happened? Bawumia Akufo-Addo led Cocoa Board went to the international market, went to pick $350 million, estimated to deal with the 40% of the cocoa plantation under rehabilitation. Spent the money, finished the money, went into Cocoa Board coffers, added 700 million Ghana cedi under the guise of doing cocoa rehabilitation, and guess what? Out of the 40% of the cocoa that were supposed to be rehabilitated, not even 10% was that. You remember 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when many of my articles on cocoa, I was raising the issue about cocoa rehabilitation not being done, and the cocoa farmers, they cut their cocoa and they are suffering, because when you cut their cocoa, you are supposed to give them some margins, some allowance. So it's an alternative livelihood allowance, so that you grow the cocoa for them. You went and cut the cocoa, went for the money, was not paying them those allowances. The farmers were complaining, their farms were not rehabilitated, and you spent the money. What did you spend the money on? Who does that to his country? And so now look, this cocoa thing, if it was those days, people would be brought into public and last. If it was those days, people ought to be brought to public, their clothes taken off, and beaten. They soak their cane in kerosene and beat them. And yet you all could do upon Nkrumah and his likes hold press conferences and accuse government of reducing the price of cocoa. Now finally to the price of cocoa. You see, the price of cocoa on the local market as bought from the farmers is a factor and function of the FOB price, the international price. You cannot buy your cocoa at a certain price beyond what is being sold on the market. And so there are price calculations that are done. There are two things involved. There is the FOB price, then there is the terminal price. The terminal price is the price at which Cocoa Board is able to sell the cocoa and be able to take care of the freight and all those things. The FOB is the price of moving the cocoa to the port when all the other calculations have not been done. If you look at the history, and as I said earlier, the MPP government has never paid beyond 25% of the FOB price. They have tried in 2021, 2022 to pay a little beyond the terminal price, but never have they paid beyond 20% of the FOB price. Now, the NDC government is saying that, look, we cannot shorten the Ghanaian farmer in this way and still expect them to be productive. The two responsibilities of Cocoa Board is the agronomic responsibility of helping the cocoa farmer to be productive on the farm with the right tools, the right inputs, the right guidance, and also the economic responsibility. So, in the past 8 years, you have withdrawn the free fertilizer you give to the cocoa farmer. You have withdrawn the free spraying exercise you've given to the cocoa farmer. You have withdrawn all the extension services that you give to the cocoa farmer. And worst of it all, you are paying them less of what you are earning on the international market. And so President Mahama, when we came, based on the promises we made to the people, said that, look, we can't pay below 70% of the FOB price to the cocoa farmer. And that was why we were saying in opposition that, look, if we were in government at the time, we could pay cocoa one bag as far as 6,000 to 6,500. Because when you do the calculation, we could pay. Indeed, in 2024, the cocoa price went as high as 1.8 billion OCDs per ton, 180,000 per ton. And if we were selling at 180,000 per ton, and we are giving it to the farmer at 36,000 per ton, in fact, the best they did when they moved the price to 3,000 was 48,000 per ton, when the cocoa was selling full price FOB at almost 1.8 billion per ton. And so President Mahama said, okay, let's do 70% of the FOB price, such that if under our regime we are selling, or the international market is selling cocoa at 1.8 billion, we can give our farmers some 80,000 Ghana cedi so that they can get the real value. But that also means that anytime the price also comes down, the farmer must also adjust the price. And so last year, for the first time, we did over 70% of the FOB price. And this is the first time in the history of this country and cocoa sector, Senna, that the government has reviewed the price of cocoa 3 times in one season. It has never happened. The difference between the MPP and us is that we are being true and fair to the farmers and more transparent with the farmers. And that is what has resulted in the variations of the prices. And so wait, on 4th August 2025, when the cocoa price was $7,200, we announced a price of 3,225 Ghana cedi per bag, and that was about 51,000 per ton. Now we realized that at the time we were setting the price, our currency was doing so well. Ghana cedi to the dollar was 10.25 Ghana cedi to a dollar, and so when you do the calculation, we could do 3,225. Just within 1 month, when we realized that our currency has shaken a little bit and it was moving to 11 cedis to a dollar, we used that conversion, listen carefully, to now convert the price so that the farmer can gain more. And that moved our price from 3,200 to 3,625. And when we did that, the good news was that because our currency was the determinant in the calculation, we outbid Ivory Coast in the price. And so it meant that our market was doing well. It will reduce the smuggling, and even people would want to be smuggling to Ghana. And so we got the results. Now after the October price adjustment, which was made at 11.7 or 11.5 and $6,000, we realized that the price started coming down. Now it has come out to 3,700. Are you still, with all the issues and the challenges and the obligations that I've said, and all the narrations that I've done, will you still want to sell at 3,600?
No,
We said no. We said no. So let's bring it down to 2,500. Even the 2,500, let me make this statement emphatically clear. Is the only time in the history of the Republic of Ghana and the history of Tetekwashi Cocoa that any government has paid 90% of the FOB price to the farmer. Never has it been done in this country before. You understand? Okay. Never has it been done before. And so if you consider the fact that the whole value chain of the cocoa production requires input cost from the farmer, which input cost right now government is giving to them for free. The fertilizer they are not going to buy, the spraying they are not going to buy. So it means that the cost of production has been significantly cut down. So when you do such reductions and give them 90% of the FOB value, you have increased their profitability. Even though in nominal terms, the value of the money they are going to get is lower, they are more profitable than when you were selling even at 3,600 and you were not giving them the inputs. And so President Mahama and the team managing our economy and this sector are a team of strategic people who are fair in mind to be true to the Ghanaian farmer and to be true to the economy and reset the economy. We campaign on reset, and indeed every single decision that we have made is in line with the reset agenda to make sure Ghanaians benefit, not only the farmers. If the farmers cocoa do well, our children, even those of us who are not cocoa farmers, our children do well, the economy does well. So now you journalists, you even benefit. It is because of the forest gains and the fiscal management. That is why Honorable, when he was coming, he bought fuel at 10 cedi per liter, when we were buying it at almost 20 cedi per liter some few years ago. And so if cocoa sector does well and it helps contributes to the strengthening of our currency, all of us will benefit. You were buying rice 25 kilo at 700 Ghana. Today you buy it 350. You know good give you. I'm waiting for my so it benefits everybody. And so now, these reforms are very crucial. We are going to process 50%, and as we speak, there is a bill being worked on to review the entire structural arrangements of the cocoa sector. And so that bill will now restructure the cocoa board and its adjoining institutions so that they can be responsive to the growing needs of running the cocoa sector efficiently.